In the vast darkness of space, where civilizations rise and fall like waves against cosmic shores, there exists a truth that the Caltharian Empire learned too late. Never underestimate a species that climbs out of gravity wells just to see what's on the other side. For 3,000 years, the Caltharians had swept across the galaxy like a crimson tide, their massive dreadnoughts reducing entire worlds to ash and memory. They had faced warrior races with claws that could tear through steel, hive minds that coordinated millions of soldiers as one, and ancient civilizations with technology that bordered on magic. All had fallen before the Empire's might. But Earth? Earth was different. The humans didn't just fight back. They did something far more dangerous. They learned. They adapted. They refused to die quietly. And when the dust settled over the smoking remains of what was once the galaxy's most feared empire, the survivors would whisper a new legend. The story of how a small blue world taught the universe that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, their numbers, or even their stubborn refusal to surrender. It was their ability to turn every defeat into a lesson, every loss into fuel for their next impossible victory. This is that story. Admiral Zeth Carr stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Crimson Dominion, watching the small blue world rotate slowly before them. His 4 arms rested confidently on the tactical display, each clawed finger tracing patterns of conquest that had worked on 1,000 worlds before this one. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, its white clouds swirling over green and brown continents like a child's toy spinning in the void. Scans complete, Admiral, reported his tactical officer, her voice carrying the same bored tone she used when cataloging cargo manifests. Primitive nuclear technology, chemical rockets, basic satellite networks. Population approximately 7 billion. No significant orbital defenses detected. Zitkerst mandibles clicked in amusement. Another backwater world clinging to its gravity while like a frightened animal. He had conquered civilizations with particle beam arrays that could crack moons, faced fleets of ships that moved faster than light itself. This would barely qualify as target practice. Standard protocols, he commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge's crystalline architecture. Broadcast the ultimatum. Give them 1 planetary rotation to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we glass the major population centers and begin ground operations. The communications officer, a young Caltharian fresh from the military academies, activated the transmission array. Across space, radio waves carrying the Empire's demands began their brief journey to Earth's primitive receivers. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chun was working late in her laboratory at the Johnson Space Center when the alarms began to sound. She looked up from her quantum computing arrays, coffee growing cold in her hand, as red lights bathed the facility in an ominous glow. The intercom crackled to life with a voice she recognized as General Martinez, the base commander. All personnel to emergency stations. We have confirmed extraterrestrial contact. This is not a drill. Sarah's hands trembled as she saved her work and locked down the quantum systems. Like every scientist on Earth, she had dreamed of this moment since childhood. But not like this. Not with alarms screaming and soldiers running past her windows. In the main briefing room, she joined hundreds of other personnel watching the massive screens that displayed what looked like science fiction made real. Ships, actual alien ships, hanging in space above Earth like metal mountains. The largest one dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, its hull stretching for kilometers and bristling with weapon systems that hurt to look at directly. General Martinez stepped to the podium, his face grim. 30 minutes ago, we received a transmission from the fleet you see before you. I'm going to play it now. The voice that emerged from the speakers was alien, yet somehow understandable, translated by their own technology into perfect English. It spoke with the casual authority of a bureaucrat reading from script. Primitive species of the 3rd planet, you exist within territory claimed by the Caltharian Empire. You have 1 rotation of your world to surrender all governmental authorities and submit to imperial rule. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your civilization. You have been warned. The room erupted in shouting. Scientists demanded data. Military officers barked orders into communicators, and politicians who had arrived by emergency transport argued about protocols and procedures. But Sarah Chun sat quietly, her mind racing through calculations and possibilities. She thought about the quantum computer she had been working on, systems that could process information in ways that classical physics said should be impossible. She thought about her colleagues around the world, brilliant minds working on projects that governments kept classified. She thought about humanity's greatest strength, something these aliens couldn't possibly understand yet. Humans didn't just build tools. They built better tools to build better tools. While the chaos continued around her, Sarah slipped out of the briefing room and made her way back to her laboratory. She had work to do. Above Earth, Admiral Zethkar received reports from his scanning teams. The planet's defensive capabilities were exactly what they expected: primitive missiles with chemical warheads, aircraft that couldn't even reach orbit, ground-based laser systems that might scratch the paint on a Caltharian corvette. Some of the major population centers had underground bunkers, but nothing that couldn't be breached with standard siege equipment. "Sir," called his intelligence officer from across the bridge, "we're detecting unusual activity around the planet." Zethkar moved to the sensor station, where holographic displays showed Earth in real time. Define unusual. Massive increase in electromagnetic activity. Their communication networks are operating at maximum capacity. We're seeing coordinated movement of personnel and equipment across multiple continents. It's like they're implementing some kind of global protocol. The Admiral's interest sparked. Most primitive worlds either surrendered immediately upon seeing imperial might or flew into chaotic panic. This level of organization suggested something more sophisticated than their technology indicated. Keep monitoring and increase our scanning resolution. I want to know what they're planning. What they were planning was beyond anything the Caltharian Empire had encountered in 3 millennia of conquest. In laboratories across Earth, scientists worked with desperate efficiency to implement protocols that had existed only in theory. The Global Defense Initiative, a project so classified that even most world leaders didn't know its full scope, had been activated for the first time in human history. Dr. Sarah Chen's quantum computers hummed to life, connecting to a network that spanned the globe. In Switzerland, particle accelerators designed for research began reconfiguring themselves for purposes their builders had never imagined. In Australia, radio telescopes turned their massive dishes skyward, not to listen but to transmit. In Russia, nuclear reactors that powered cities began redirecting their output to facilities that officially didn't exist. The plan was insane, impossible, and absolutely human. When faced with extinction, they didn't despair. They innovated. Professor Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo worked feverishly at her computer terminal, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces as she coordinated with teams around the world. The quantum entanglement communication network she had helped design was finally being tested under real conditions. Information traveled instantly between continents, allowing Earth's brightest minds to collaborate as if they were in the same room. "Sarah, are you seeing the power consumption data?" she asked, her voice transmitted directly to Dr. Chen's laboratory through quantum channels. "I'm seeing it," Sarah replied, her own hands never stopping as she calibrated delicate instruments. "We're drawing enough power to light up half of North America." "How long until they notice?" "They've already noticed, but they don't understand what they're seeing." Above them, Caltharian sensors detected the massive energy expenditures, but classified them as panic responses. Perhaps the humans were trying to build bunkers or attempting to launch their primitive spacecraft in a futile evacuation attempt. The readings didn't match any known weapon system in Imperial databases. Admiral Zethkar studied the energy signatures with growing puzzlement. What are they doing down there? No planetary defense system requires this much power. His tactical officer pulled up comparative data from previous conquests. Similar power spikes were recorded on Velthera Prime, when they attempted to overload their planetary shield generators. And on Karath, when they tried to use their city's fusion reactors as improvised weapons. Both were desperate, futile gestures. But neither of those civilizations had this level of coordination, Zethkar mused. Every major population center is participating in this, whatever this is. What was becoming clear in facilities around Earth? The plan required perfect timing, impossible precision, and technologies that existed at the very edge of human understanding. It also required something else, something the Caltharian Empire had systematically eliminated from every world they conquered: hope. Dr. Marcus Webb worked in a bunker beneath the Nevada desert, where experimental fusion reactors provided power for projects that would have seemed like magic a generation earlier. His team was preparing something that even he didn't fully understand: a weapon system based on principles that quantum physics said might work under exactly the right conditions if they were very lucky and completely insane. Energy levels are approaching critical thresholds, reported his assistant, a young physicist whose calculations had made this entire plan possible. Quantum field generators are synchronized across all 7 sites. Marcus checked his chronometer. 6 hours until Earth's response deadline. 6 hours to complete humanity's most desperate gambit. Begin charging the primary array, he ordered, and send word to the other sites. It's time to show these aliens what happens when you threaten the wrong species. The Caltharian fleet remained in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had faced down civilizations with faster ships, bigger guns, and more advanced technology. They had never faced a species that could turn the laws of physics themselves into weapons. As Earth's rotation brought the deadline closer, Admiral Zethkar prepared for what should have been a routine conquest. His gunners ran final checks on weapons that could turn continents to glass. His ground forces prepared for the occupation of a broken world. His engineers calculated how long it would take to strip Earth of useful resources once the primitive inhabitants were eliminated. None of them suspected that in laboratories and bunkers around the planet, human scientists were putting the finishing touches on something that would redefine what was possible in warfare. They had taken technologies developed for understanding the universe and weaponized them in ways that their alien invaders couldn't imagine. The countdown to humanity's response had begun, and the Caltharian Empire was about to learn why humans had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and countless natural disasters to crawl out of their gravity well and reach for the stars. They were about to discover that the most dangerous species in the galaxy wasn't the one with the biggest guns or the fastest ships. It was the one that refused to accept that anything was impossible. Admiral Zethkar stood on his bridge, watching the primitive world below, completely unaware that he was about to witness the birth of something new in galactic warfare. Something that would make the Empire's 3,000-year reign of terror seem like ancient history. The humans were ready to make their reply, and it would be heard across the galaxy. The deadline arrived with Earth's sunrise over the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Zethkar stood ready to receive humanity's surrender, his weapons officers prepared to begin the systematic destruction of major population centers. Instead, Earth sent them something that broke every rule of conventional warfare. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out, voice tight with confusion, "we're detecting massive quantum fluctuations across the planet's surface." Before Zethkar could respond, space itself began to twist around the Caltharian fleet. Reality warped and bent as 7 points on Earth's surface simultaneously activated devices that shouldn't have been possible with primitive human technology. The quantum field generators that Dr. Chun and her colleagues had spent 6 hours preparing tore holes in the fabric of space-time itself. The first effect was the gravity wells. Instead of nuclear missiles or laser beams, Earth attacked with weaponized physics. Artificial gravity fields, generated by quantum manipulation on a scale never before attempted, reached out from the planet's surface and seized the Caltharian ships like invisible hands. The massive dreadnought Crimson Dominion suddenly found itself pulled toward Earth with the force of a collapsing star. Emergency thrusters. Zethkar roared, his four arms scrambling across control interfaces as a ship lurched violently toward the planet. All power to engines. But the humans had calculated for this response. As the Caltharian ships burned their fusion drives at maximum output, fighting against the artificial gravity wells, the second part of Earth's impossible attack activated. Quantum interference patterns, broadcast from installations that officially didn't exist, began disrupting the molecular bonds in the alien hull materials. Dr. Sarah Chun watched from her bunker as telemetry data streamed in from orbital sensors. Her quantum computers were performing calculations at speeds that made her earlier work look like an abacus, coordinating the most complex physics experiment in human history. Every variable had to be perfect: the gravitational field strength, the quantum interference patterns, the timing of each activation sequence. Phase 2 is active, she reported into her headset, speaking to teams around the world. Molecular disruption fields are operating within normal parameters. Above Earth, the Caltharian fleet was experiencing something that their 3,000-year military history had no protocols for. The hulls of their ships were literally falling apart at the atomic level as quantum fields disrupted the fundamental forces holding their matter together. Entire sections of armor plating simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered into component particles by forces that conventional physics said were impossible to control. Admiral Zethkar watched in horrified fascination as his mighty fleet began to disintegrate around him. Smaller ships were already breaking apart completely, their crews lost to the vacuum of space. His own dreadnought was holding together better, its massive redundant systems and armor keeping it functional despite the impossible attack. But even it was taking damage that his engineering teams couldn't explain, much less repair. "Sir," his communications officer called out, her voice barely controlled panic. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet." "Put it through," Zethkar commanded, his mandibles clicking with fury. The voice that filled his bridge belonged to a human female, speaking with calm professionalism that made her words even more chilling. "This is Dr. Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Initiative. You're currently experiencing a demonstration of human defensive capabilities. Your ships are being destroyed by controlled quantum field manipulation. You have exactly 10 minutes to begin immediate retreat from Earth's solar system. If you do not comply, we will activate Phase 3 of our response, which will not be survivable for your fleet." Zethkar's tactical officer looked up from his devastated sensor displays. "Admiral, we've lost 40% of our S-Corps vessels. The Dreadnought's hull integrity is down to 60% and falling. Whatever they're doing to us, it's unlike anything in Imperial databases." The Admiral stared at the impossible readings on his screens. Primitive humans, who should have been cowering before Imperial might, had somehow weaponized the fundamental forces of reality itself. Their attack wasn't just destroying his fleet, it was rewriting what he thought was possible in warfare. "How?" he whispered, more to himself than his crew. The answer lay in something the Caltharian Empire had never understood. Human desperation combined with human ingenuity created innovations that more advanced civilizations never achieved. While other species developed within the comfortable bounds of established science, humans had a unique talent for breaking the rules when survival was at stake. On Earth, the scientific teams monitoring their impossible weapons were equally amazed that their theories had actually worked. Dr. Marcus Webb checked his instruments in the Nevada facility, hardly believing the data streaming across his displays. "The quantum field generators are holding steady," he reported. "Power consumption is enormous, but we're maintaining coherent field patterns across all 7 sites." Professor Yuki Tanaka's voice came through the quantum communication link from Tokyo. "Gravitational manipulation is performing beyond our most optimistic projections. We're actually pulling their largest ship into a decaying orbit." Dr. Chun felt a mixture of triumph and terror as she realized what they had accomplished. "Understood. Begin preparation for Phase 3, but hold activation until my command." Phase 3 was humanity's final card, and Even the scientists who designed it weren't entirely sure it would work. If the quantum manipulation techniques they were using for gravity and molecular disruption were scaled up to their theoretical maximum, the resulting effect would essentially create a localized Big Bang, a brief but incredibly intense expansion of space-time that would vaporize everything within several million kilometers of Earth. It would also probably destroy Earth's moon, disrupt the planet's orbit, and potentially kill millions of people from the gravitational aftershocks. But it would definitely eliminate the Caltharian threat permanently. Admiral Zethkar watched his chronometer count down the human deadline. His engineering teams reported that hull degradation was accelerating, and their attempts to compensate with emergency repairs were failing. The humans weren't just attacking his ships, they were attacking the fundamental forces that held matter together. His crew, trained to face any conventional weapon, were helpless against an enemy that could manipulate reality itself. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildup at the 7 surface sites. Whatever they used against us before, this is several orders of magnitude larger." Zethkar realized with crystalline clarity that he was facing a choice no Imperial admiral had ever confronted: surrender or face a weapon that could destroy his entire fleet without the humans firing a single conventional shot. Everything in his training, his culture, and his species' 3,000-year history of conquest told him to fight to the death rather than retreat before a primitive world. But the scattered wreckage of 40% of his fleet told a different story. These humans had somehow achieved mastery over forces that even the Empire's most advanced scientists barely understood. They were primitive in their technology, but absolutely terrifying in their application of theoretical physics. With 8 minutes remaining on the human deadline, Admiral Zethkar made the most difficult decision of his military career. All ships, prepare for immediate withdrawal from this system. His bridge crew stared at him in shock. No Imperial fleet had ever retreated from a primitive world. The very concept violated everything they had been taught about Caltharian superiority and Imperial might. "Sir," his tactical officer protested, "our reputation, our honor won't matter if we're dead," Zethkar replied grimly. "These humans have weapons that make our most advanced technology look like stone knives. We retreat, we report what we've seen, and we let High Command decide how to respond to an enemy that can weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe." As the surviving Caltharian ships began their emergency departure from Earth's solar system, their sensors recorded every detail of the impossible human weapons for later analysis. The quantum field generators were still active, still demonstrating capabilities that shouldn't have been possible for a civilization that had barely achieved spaceflight. On Earth, the teams monitoring the alien retreat felt a mixture of relief and disbelief. Dr. Chen stared at her displays, showing the massive alien ships accelerating away from their world at speeds that conventional physics said should tear them apart. "They're actually leaving," she said into her headset. "Phase 3 activation is no longer necessary." Around the world, human scientists began the careful process of powering down their impossible weapons. The quantum field generators that had torn apart alien warships would return to their peaceful research purposes, studying the fundamental nature of reality rather than weaponizing it. Professor Tanaka's voice carried exhaustion and amazement in equal measure. "We did it. We actually made them retreat." Dr. Webb was already thinking about the implications. "They'll be back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but they'll return with better weapons and countermeasures for what we did today. Then, we'll have to be ready with something even more impossible," Dr. Chen replied. "Because that's what humans do. We adapt." The Caltharian Empire's first defeat in 3,000 years sent shockwaves through their galactic territories. Admiral Zethkar's report of human capabilities was initially dismissed as impossible, the fevered imaginings of a commander who had suffered an inexplicable defeat. But the sensor recordings and wreckage analysis painted a picture that no Imperial scientist could explain. The humans had somehow achieved mastery over quantum mechanics on a scale that the Empire's most advanced laboratories couldn't replicate. They had weaponized theoretical physics, turning the fundamental forces of reality into tools of war. Most disturbing of all, they had done it with technology that appeared primitive by Imperial standards. High Command's response was swift and brutal. If the humans could manipulate quantum fields to destroy starships, they represented a threat to Imperial dominance unlike anything the Empire had faced. A massive battle fleet was assembled, equipped with the Empire's most advanced weapons and defenses. This time, there would be no evacuation deadlines or opportunities for surrender. The human homeworld would be sterilized from a safe distance, turned to radioactive slag before their impossible weapons could be brought to bear. But the humans weren't sitting idle during the Empire's preparations. Dr. Chun and her colleagues around the world had learned valuable lessons from their first engagement with alien technology. They had studied every piece of sensor data, analyzed every energy signature, and reverse-engineered what they could of Caltharian systems from the wreckage left behind. The next phase of human defensive preparation would make their quantum field generators look like children's toys. Because humans had discovered something about themselves during that first desperate battle. When faced with extinction, they didn't just fight back. They evolved. In laboratories that had been repurposed from civilian research to military necessity, human scientists worked on projects that pushed the boundaries of known physics even further. If the aliens were coming back with better weapons, humanity would greet them with capabilities that redefined what was possible in warfare. The war for Earth's survival was just beginning, and both sides were about to learn that the most dangerous enemy is the one that learns from its mistakes faster than you can adapt to its innovations. Admiral Zethkar, demoted but alive, studied the sensor recordings of human weapons from his new position in Imperial intelligence. He had a growing suspicion that the Empire's 3,000-year reign of conquest was about to encounter its first species that could match Caltharian innovation with human determination. The humans had won their first battle through desperate improvisation and theoretical physics. Their next defense would be built on hard-won experience and the bitter knowledge that the universe was full of enemies who would never stop trying to destroy them. It was going to be the kind of war that would either forge humanity into something stronger than they had ever been, or teach the galaxy why some species were better left undisturbed. 3 months after their humiliating retreat from Earth, the Caltharian Empire returned with a vengeance that made their first fleet look like a scouting party. Grand Admiral Vexthal commanded an armada of 200 ships, including 5 planet-killer dreadnoughts and experimental weapons designed specifically to counter the humans' impossible quantum manipulations. The Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace beyond the orbit of Pluto, maintaining a safe distance while their sensors scanned for any signs of the mysterious energy signatures that had destroyed 40% of Zethkar's forces. What they found waiting for them defied every strategic calculation in their databases. "Sir," reported the sensor operator, her voice tight with disbelief, "we're detecting artificial structures throughout the outer solar system. Massive ones." Grand Admiral Vexthal, his 6 arms moving across holographic displays, studied the impossible data streaming from his instruments. The primitive humans who had barely achieved orbital flight 3 months ago had somehow constructed installations that dwarfed Imperial space stations. Worse yet, these structures were generating energy signatures that made their previous quantum weapons look like flashlights. "How many installations are we detecting?" he asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. "Initial count shows 47 major facilities, sir. They're positioned at Lagrange points throughout the system, connected by some kind of coherent energy field network. And, sir, we're detecting artificial gravity wells around each installation." Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the command center of Facility Prime, humanity's first space-based weapons platform, watching the alien fleet maintain their cautious distance beyond Pluto's orbit. The installation around her was a testament to what humans could accomplish when survival was at stake, and every resource on Earth was dedicated to a single purpose. 3 months ago, she had been running quantum experiments in a terrestrial laboratory. Today, she commanded a space station that was essentially a weaponized physics laboratory the size of Small Moon, powered by fusion reactors that could light up entire continents, and equipped with technologies that existed at the very edge of human theoretical understanding. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Commander Torres from the tactical station. Long-range sensors confirm it's definitely a Caltharian fleet. 200 ships, including several configurations we haven't seen before. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. The humans had spent 3 months preparing for this moment, but they were still vastly outnumbered. The difference was that they were no longer the same species that had faced the Empire's first attack. War had a way of accelerating evolution, and humans had evolved faster in 3 months than most civilizations managed in centuries. Activate the Prometheus grid, she commanded. Full power to all installations. Around the solar system, 47 space-based weapons platforms came online simultaneously. Each installation was connected to the others through quantum entanglement networks that allowed instantaneous communication and coordination across light years of space. More importantly, each platform was equipped with weapons that made Earth's defensive systems look like antiques. The humans had learned from their first encounter that conventional warfare was useless against the Empire's technology. So they had abandoned conventional warfare entirely. Instead of building bigger guns, they had built weapons that rewrote the laws of physics in localized areas of space-time. Professor Yuki Tanaka's voice reached Dr. Chun through the quantum communication network from Installation 12, positioned near Jupiter. Sarah, all platforms report ready status. The dimensional manipulation arrays are charged and synchronized. Copy that, Yuki. Marcus, what's the status on the temporal distortion generators? Dr. Marcus Webb responded from Installation 7, hidden in the asteroid belt. Online and stable. We've achieved localized time dilation fields that should allow our weapons to fire several seconds before the aliens even realize they're under attack. The Caltharian fleet had no way to understand what they were facing. The humans had moved beyond quantum manipulation into territories that even Imperial scientists considered purely theoretical. They had weaponized time itself, creating zones where cause and effect operated under rules that favored humanity's survival. Grand Admiral Vexthal reviewed his fleet's defensive capabilities with growing unease. The Imperial ships were equipped with quantum field dampeners designed to neutralize the humans' previous weapons, energy shields that could deflect anything short of a supernova, and armor plating forged from metals that could withstand direct hits from black hole cannons, none of which would help against weapons that attacked through dimensions the Caltharians didn't even know existed. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're detecting massive energy spikes from the human installations. Whatever they're preparing, it's operating on power levels that should require industrial-scale antimatter reactors. Begin the attack, Vexthal commanded. Maximum range bombardment with antimatter torpedoes. I want those installations destroyed before they can activate whatever weapons they're charging. 200 Caltharian ships opened fire simultaneously, launching a barrage of antimatter weapons that should have been sufficient to sterilize several solar systems. The torpedoes streaked across space at near light speed, their targeting systems locked onto the largest human installations. They never reached their targets. Dr. Chun watched the sensor displays as the alien attack approached, then simply ceased to exist. The dimensional manipulation arrays that Professor Tanaka had spent 3 months perfecting didn't destroy the incoming weapons. They relocated them to pocket dimensions where they exploded harmlessly in empty space. All enemy ordnance neutralized, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres. Beginning counterattack sequence. What happened next redefined what was possible in space warfare. Instead of launching missiles or firing energy beams, the human installations attacked by manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Gravity became a weapon, crushing Caltharian ships between artificially generated singularities. Time became a weapon, aging enemy hulls into dust in seconds while their crews experienced the attack in slow motion. Distance became a weapon, as human platforms used spatial manipulation to position their targets inside stellar cores for brief, destructive moments. Grand Admiral Vexthul watched his magnificent fleet disintegrate under attacks that his instruments could barely detect, much less defend against. Ships simply vanished from existence, their atoms scattered across multiple dimensions. Others aged centuries in seconds, their crews dying of old age while their vessels crumbled into rust. Still others found themselves suddenly occupying the same space as asteroids or gas giant atmospheres, with predictably catastrophic results. "Sir," his communications officer called out in barely controlled panic, "we're receiving another transmission from the humans." This time, the voice belonged to a man with a calm, professorial tone that made his words even more terrifying than the devastating weapons they had just witnessed. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Initiative. You are currently experiencing the second generation of human defensive capabilities. Your fleet is being systematically eliminated through controlled manipulation of space-time physics. You have exactly 5 minutes to begin immediate retreat from this solar system. Any ship that remains after the deadline will be relocated to the interior of our sun." Vexthul stared at his tactical displays, where the readouts showed impossible things happening to his fleet. Ships were being destroyed by weapons that attacked through dimensions his species had never imagined, using forces that shouldn't have been controllable with any known technology. "Ow!" he whispered, echoing the same question Admiral Zethkar had asked 3 months earlier. The answer was something the Caltharian Empire couldn't comprehend. Humans didn't just adapt to threats, they learned from them. Every sensor reading from the first battle had been analyzed, every piece of alien technology reverse-engineered, every weakness in Imperial defenses identified and exploited. The humans hadn't just built better weapons. They had rebuilt the fundamental principles of warfare itself. Dr. Sarah Chun monitored the tactical situation from Facility Prime, watching as the Caltharian fleet began another emergency withdrawal. But this time was different. This time, the humans were ready for pursuit. "All platforms, prepare for extended engagement," she commanded. "If they're running, we're going to make sure they remember why they shouldn't come back." The pursuit that followed became legend throughout the galaxy. Human installations used their dimensional manipulation capabilities to follow the retreating Imperial fleet through hyperspace itself, appearing from nowhere to strike at ships that thought they had escaped to safety. The Caltharians found themselves hunted across multiple star systems by weapons that could attack through dimensions they couldn't even detect. It wasn't just a military defeat, it was a complete rewriting of the strategic balance in that region of the galaxy. The Caltharian Empire, which had conquered 1,000 worlds through superior firepower and advanced technology, suddenly found itself outmatched by a species they had dismissed as primitive. But the humans weren't finished. As news of the second defeat reached Imperial High Command, Dr. Chun and her colleagues were already working on the next phase of Earth's defenses. The dimensional manipulation technology that had devastated the Caltharian fleet was just the beginning. Professor Tanaka's voice carried exhaustion and determination in equal measure through the quantum communication link. "Sarah, we need to discuss the implications of what we just accomplished. We didn't just defeat their fleet. We proved that human innovation can outpace Imperial adaptation." Dr. Webb was monitoring long-range sensors from his position in the asteroid belt. "Agreed. But they'll be back again, probably with countermeasures for our dimensional weapons. We need to start working on Generation 3. What are you thinking?" Dr. Chen asked. "Consciousness manipulation," Webb replied quietly. "If we can weaponize space and time, why not weaponize thought itself?" The idea was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. The humans had already proven they could manipulate matter, energy, gravity, and dimensional space. The next logical step was to target the one thing that all their enemies had in common: the neural processes that allowed them to think, plan, and coordinate their attacks. Dr. Chun felt a chill as she realized the implications. They weren't just building weapons anymore. They were becoming something new, something that could survive in a galaxy full of enemies by becoming more dangerous than anything else in existence. The Caltharian Empire's third defeat would be different from the first two. Instead of being destroyed or driven away, they would simply forget why they had come to Earth in the first place. Their ships would return home with no memory of the human homeworld, no records of the devastating defeats they had suffered, no knowledge that there was anything in that distant solar system worth conquering. It would be the perfect victory, an enemy that didn't just surrender, but forgot that conflict had ever existed. As the remnants of the Imperial fleet limped back toward their territory, the humans began construction of their most ambitious project yet. Generation 3 of Earth's defenses would be the final answer to the question of whether humanity could survive in a hostile galaxy. The answer, as the Caltharian Empire was about to discover, was that humanity wouldn't just survive. They would become the thing that other species feared to encounter in the dark spaces between stars. War had transformed them from a curious, peaceful species into something that even their own scientists didn't fully recognize. But it was a transformation they embraced because the alternative was extinction. And humans had never been very good at accepting extinction as an option. The third Caltharian assault fleet approached Earth's solar system with caution that bordered on paranoia. Supreme Commander Kethvora had learned from the previous disasters, bringing a massive armada of 500 ships equipped with every defensive system the Empire could devise. Quantum field dampeners, dimensional anchors, temporal stabilizers, and psionic shields protected his vessels from any conceivable human weapon. What he hadn't protected against was the complete rewriting of his crew's memories. Dr. Sarah Chan stood in the neural interface chamber of Facility Prime, her consciousness linked to the most sophisticated computer network humanity had ever constructed. Around her, quantum processors hummed with calculations that mapped the fundamental patterns of thought itself. After 6 months of development, the consciousness manipulation grid represented the pinnacle of human innovation in weaponry. All platforms report ready status. Came the voice of Professor Tanaka through the neural link. The psychic resonance fields are synchronized across all installations. Dr. Chun felt the massive network of human minds connected through quantum entanglement, their combined cognitive abilities amplified by technology that turned thought into a weapon more devastating than any bomb. Initiating contact with the enemy fleet. Begin memory pattern analysis. The attack was invisible and unstoppable. Instead of targeting the Caltharian ships, the human consciousness weapons targeted the minds of everyone aboard them. Quantum fields penetrated every defensive barrier to reach the neural networks of living beings, where they began the delicate process of selective memory editing. Supreme Commander Kethvora never noticed anything wrong. One moment, he was reviewing tactical data about the primitive human homeworld his fleet had been sent to conquer. The next moment, he was wondering why his armada was positioned in this particular star system at all. The target planet looked peaceful and unremarkable, certainly nothing that would require the Empire's largest battle fleet. Navigation, he called out, his voice carrying confusion instead of command authority. Why are we here? His navigation officer consulted her instruments, frowning as she tried to recall their mission parameters. I'm not entirely sure, sir. Our logs show we were ordered to this system, but I can't remember why it was considered significant. Across the fleet, 500 ships full of Caltharian warriors experienced the same phenomenon. Their memories of Earth as a threat simply vanished, replaced with vague recollections of routine patrol duties in an uninteresting sector of space. Technical specifications for human weapons disappeared from computer databases. Strategic analyses of primitive defensive capabilities faded from military records. Dr. Marcus Webb monitored the consciousness manipulation from Installation 7, watching as his instruments tracked the systematic deletion of specific memory engrams in thousands of alien minds. Target acquisition is proceeding normally, he reported through the neural link. We're successfully isolating and removing all memories related to Earth, human technology, and previous fleet deployments to this system. The process was surgical in its precision. The human consciousness weapons didn't destroy minds or cause permanent damage. They simply edited out specific information while leaving everything else intact. Caltharian officers retained their military training, their personal relationships, their knowledge of Imperial technology and tactics. They just forgot that Earth existed or that they had any reason to be interested in Sol System. Professor Tanaka oversaw the coordination from her position on Installation 12. Her consciousness expanded through quantum interfaces that let her perceive the network of alien minds as patterns of electrical activity. Memory deletion is proceeding within normal parameters. Estimated completion time is 4 hours. But the humans had learned that defeating an enemy fleet wasn't enough. The Caltharian Empire would simply send another armada and another until eventually they developed countermeasures that could protect against human weapons. The only permanent solution was to ensure that the Empire forgot Earth existed entirely. Dr. Chun extended her consciousness beyond the immediate fleet to touch the quantum communication networks that connected these ships to Imperial Command. Through those channels, she began the most ambitious memory manipulation in human history, erasing all knowledge of Earth from the central databases of the Caltharian Empire itself. It was work that required the combined processing power of every human installation in the solar system and the linked consciousness of Earth's most brilliant scientists. They had to identify every piece of data related to their star system, every strategic analysis that mentioned Sol, every report that referenced the primitive world in the Orion Arm. All of it had to be deleted carefully, replaced with plausible but unremarkable information that would never draw Imperial attention. The task was made more complex by the need to maintain logical consistency. Simply removing Earth from all records would leave obvious gaps that might trigger investigations. Instead, the human consciousness network crafted elaborate false memories and fabricated historical records that explained the existence of those fleets and missions without referencing their actual target. Supreme Commander Keth Vora found himself reviewing mission logs that showed his armada had been sent to investigate reports of pirate activity in an uninhabited system. The reports had proven false, leading to routine patrol duties that had lasted several months. It was the kind of bureaucratic mistake that happened occasionally in any military organization, hardly worth detailed analysis. "Signal the fleet," he commanded, convinced that their meaningless patrol was finally over. "Set course for Imperial space. There's nothing of interest in this system." As the Caltharian Armada began its withdrawal, human observers tracked every ship to ensure the memory modifications held stable. Dr. Webb monitored neural activity patterns through quantum resonance fields, watching for any signs that the artificial memories might degrade or that natural recollections might resurface. "All targets showing stable memory integration," he reported. "The false recollections are indistinguishable from genuine experiences at the neural level." Dr. Chun felt a mixture of triumph and unease as she watched the massive alien fleet depart, their crews completely unaware that they had been mentally compromised. The consciousness manipulation technology was incredibly powerful, but it also represented a fundamental change in the nature of warfare. They weren't just defeating enemies anymore. They were rewriting the thoughts of living beings. "Sarah," Professor Tanaka's voice carried concern through the neural link. "We need to discuss the ethical implications of what we've just accomplished." "I know," Dr. Chen replied quietly. "But the alternative was the destruction of our entire civilization. We did what we had to do to survive." The conversation that followed, conducted through quantum-linked consciousnesses across multiple space installations, would shape humanity's future approach to galactic politics. They had developed weapons that could manipulate matter, energy, space, time, and now consciousness itself. The question was whether they could use such power responsibly. Dr. Webb raised the practical concerns. The Empire will eventually discover what happened to their fleets. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually someone will notice the pattern of missing missions and deleted records. Then, we need to be prepared for that possibility, Dr. Chen responded. Begin development of Generation 4 defensive systems. If they discover the memory manipulations, We need weapons that can protect us from an empire that knows exactly what we're capable of. Generation 4 development pushed human science into territories that bordered on the incomprehensible. If consciousness could be weaponized, then perhaps reality itself could be edited like a computer program. The theoretical physicists who had once studied the fundamental nature of the universe now worked on weapons that could change those fundamentals at will. The project required resources beyond anything humanity had attempted before. Entire asteroids were converted into processing centers, powered by artificial black holes that generated energy levels approaching those of stellar cores. The human colonies that had been established throughout the solar system were transformed into components of a single, vast computer network designed to model and manipulate the basic code of existence itself. 6 months after the third Caltharian defeat, Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the command center of Facility Omega, humanity's first reality manipulation platform. The installation was built around a contained singularity that served as both power source and computational core, processing calculations that mapped the quantum structure of space-time itself. Reality editing systems are online, reported the artificial intelligence that served as her interface with a cosmic-scale computer network. The AI was itself a revolutionary development. Its consciousness expanded beyond human limitations through quantum processing systems that operated at the speed of light. Begin preliminary tests, Dr. Chun commanded. Target parameters: uninhabited star system, Delta Orionis. Modification: adjust fundamental constants to prevent fusion reactions in stellar cores. The test was subtle but devastating. By changing the values of basic physical constants in a localized region of spacetime, the humans could make stars stop burning, planets cease to exist, or entire solar systems operate under modified laws of physics. It was the ultimate weapon, one that could rewrite the rules of reality itself to ensure human survival. The test was successful. Delta Orionis, a massive blue giant star, simply stopped generating energy. Its fusion reactions ceased as the fundamental forces that made them possible were adjusted to new values. The star didn't explode or collapse. It just became an ordinary ball of hydrogen and helium, no longer capable of supporting nuclear reactions under the new physical laws that governed its existence. Dr. Chin watched the sensor readings with a mixture of awe and terror. They had just proven that human science could edit the basic programming of the universe itself. No enemy fleet, no matter how advanced, could survive in a region of space where the laws of physics had been rewritten to prohibit their existence. The implications were staggering. Humanity had become something that transcended normal definitions of a spacefaring civilization. They were cosmic engineers, capable of modifying the fundamental structure of reality to ensure their survival. Any species that threatened Earth would find themselves fighting against opponents who could change the rules of existence itself. But power on this scale came with responsibilities that no single species should bear. Dr. Chun and her colleagues found themselves grappling with questions that had no precedent in galactic history. What gave them the right to manipulate the basic forces that governed all life? How could they use such weapons without becoming the very threat they had originally defended against? The answer, when it came, was surprisingly simple. They would use their reality editing capabilities defensively, creating zones of modified physics around Earth and human colonies that would make them impossible to attack. Any hostile force that entered those regions would find their weapons useless, their ships unable to function, their very existence challenged by physical laws designed to favor human survival. It was the perfect defense and the end of humanity as a normal species. They had evolved beyond the need for conventional warfare, beyond the limitations of standard physics, beyond the restrictions that governed every other form of life in the galaxy. The Caltharian Empire, when it eventually discovered that 3 of its largest fleets had simply vanished without explanation, would launch investigations that revealed nothing. The missing ships, the deleted records, the memory modifications. all of it would be attributed to some kind of unprecedented system failure or enemy action by unknown parties. They would never learn that their fleets had encountered a species that could rewrite the fundamental code of existence itself, because the humans made sure that such knowledge would be edited out of reality before it could be discovered. Earth and its colonies existed now in a bubble of modified space-time, where human survival was guaranteed by the basic laws of physics themselves. It was the ultimate expression of the principle that had driven their species since the first alien ultimatum. When faced with extinction, humans didn't just fight back. They became something that extinction couldn't touch. 2 years after the last Caltharian fleet had mysteriously vanished, the galaxy began to notice something strange happening in the Orion armed trade routes that had operated for millennia suddenly became more efficient, with ships reporting impossible travel times and fuel consumption rates that defied known physics. Exploration vessels discovered new star systems where none had existed before, complete with planets that seemed to have been constructed rather than naturally formed. The Caltharian Empire, meanwhile, struggled with a growing crisis that their leaders couldn't explain. 3 entire battle fleets had vanished without trace, their disappearances accompanied by massive data corruption that had eliminated all records of their missions. Worse yet, Imperial scientists were reporting fundamental problems with their most advanced research projects. Experiments that should have worked according to established physics were failing for reasons no one could understand. Dr. Sarah Chun walked through the gardens of New Geneva, humanity's first city built entirely in modified space-time. Around her, trees grew in impossible spirals that existed in 4 dimensions simultaneously, while children played games that involved manipulating gravity and time as casually as other species threw balls. The city existed in a pocket of reality where the laws of physics had been rewritten to accommodate human needs and preferences. Status report from the outer installations announced the artificial intelligence that served as her constant companion, its voice emerging from quantum fields that required no physical speakers. The reality modification network is operating within normal parameters. Current coverage includes all of Sol system and extends approximately 50 light-years in all directions. Dr. Chin nodded, watching a group of human children create temporary pocket dimensions to play hide and seek in spaces larger than they appeared from outside. The next generation of humanity was growing up with capabilities that would have seemed like magic to their ancestors. They could manipulate matter and energy with thought alone, travel through dimensions that normal physics said didn't exist, and perceive reality in ways that transcended ordinary sensory experience. Any contact from outside the modification zone? She asked. 17 exploration vessels from various species have approached the boundary, the AI reported. All have been redirected through modified space-time corridors that lead them around our territory. They remain unaware that anything unusual has occurred. The reality modification network that protected human space was more sophisticated than simple defensive barriers. It created what Dr. Chun and her colleagues called narrative channels, modifications to space-time that guided potential threats away from human territory by making other destinations seem more interesting or accessible. Ships that might have investigated the Sol system instead found themselves mysteriously drawn to explore other regions of the galaxy. Dr. Marcus Webb materialized beside her through a dimensional portal, his image transmitted from Installation Omega in the outer system. The transportation technology was another benefit of their reality manipulation capabilities. Humans could now travel instantly between any 2 points in modified space-time. "We have a situation developing," he announced without preamble. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout Caltharian space. Something is prompting them to mobilize their entire military. Dr. Chun felt a chill despite the perfect climate control maintained by localized reality modifications. Do they know about us? Unknown. But they're not moving in our direction. Intelligence suggests they're responding to reports of entire star systems vanishing throughout their territory. The disappearing star systems were an unintended consequence of humanity's reality modification experiments. When they adjusted fundamental constants in test regions of space, the effects sometimes spread beyond their intended boundaries, creating zones where matter simply couldn't exist under the new physical laws. Entire civilizations had vanished overnight as their home systems were edited out of existence by expanding fields of modified physics. Professor Yuki Tanaka joined the conversation through quantum consciousness link from her research station near Jupiter. "The modifications are becoming self-sustaining," she reported grimly. "We're losing control of the boundaries between modified and normal space-time. At current expansion rates, the reality distortion fields will encompass the entire galaxy within 50 years. The revelation struck Dr. Chun like a physical blow. They had created weapons to defend humanity from extinction, but those weapons were now threatening to edit the entire galaxy out of existence. Every species, every civilization, every form of life beyond Earth was at risk of simply ceasing to exist as reality itself was rewritten to accommodate human survival. Options? Dr. Chen asked, though she already suspected the answer would be limited and unpleasant. Dr. Webb consulted data streams from across the modification network. "We could attempt to contain the expanding fields, but that would require dismantling most of our defensive systems. We'd be vulnerable to attack again." Or, Professor Tanaka added quietly, "We could accelerate the process. Complete the transformation of galactic physics within a controlled time frame, creating modified zones where other species could survive under the new physical laws." The choice before humanity was stark and terrible. They could abandon their reality-based defenses and risk annihilation by hostile alien forces, or they could complete their transformation of the galaxy and take responsibility for the survival of every species within it. There was no middle ground. Physics itself wouldn't allow partial modifications to remain stable. Dr. Chen looked around at the impossible city of New Geneva, where human children played with forces that could reshape planets, and artists created sculptures from crystallized time. This was what they had become, their desperate struggle for survival. Beings who could edit reality itself to match their needs and desires. But with that power came a responsibility that no species should bear alone. "Begin implementation of the Gardner Protocol," she commanded. "If we're going to reshape the galaxy, we're going to do it responsibly." The Gardner Protocol was humanity's most ambitious project yet, a plan to transform the entire galaxy into a carefully managed ecosystem where every species could thrive under physics tailored to their specific needs. Instead of imposing human-friendly modifications everywhere, they would create customized reality zones that allowed each civilization to exist under physical laws optimized for their particular form of life. The project required resources that dwarfed anything they had attempted before. Every star in human space was converted into a processing node, their energy output channeled into computational systems that modeled the preferences and requirements of thousands of different species. Artificial intelligences expanded beyond human comprehension work to design physics packages that would allow carbon-based life, silicon-based entities, energy beings, and forms of existence that had no terrestrial analogs to coexist in adjacent regions of modified space-time. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the command center of Facility Genesis, a structure built around the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center. The installation was humanity's masterwork, a reality manipulation platform capable of editing the fundamental structure of space-time on galactic scales. Around her, holographic displays showed the progress of the Great Transformation as modified physics spread outward from the galactic core at the speed of light. Sector 7 Alpha conversion is complete, reported one of the expanded artificial intelligences that served as her interface with the Galactic Modification Network. Caltharian space is now operating under physical laws that enhance their natural psychic abilities while maintaining compatibility with their existing technology. The transformation wasn't just technical, it was actively beneficial for the species it encountered. The Caltharians found that their new physical environment enhanced their natural telepathic gifts while providing new opportunities for technological development. Other species discovered that the modified physics eliminated the resource scarcity that had driven them to warfare, or enhanced their cognitive abilities, or simply made their lives more comfortable in ways they couldn't fully understand. Status report on species adaptation rates. Dr. Chen asked, 97% of encountered civilizations are reporting positive outcomes from the physics modifications, the AI responded. The remaining 3% are being provided with customized reality zones that better match their original environmental preferences. The galaxy was being transformed into something unprecedented in cosmic history, a managed ecosystem where intelligent species could develop and thrive without the constraints that had traditionally limited their growth. Scarcity was eliminated by physics that allowed matter and energy to be manipulated at will. Conflict was reduced by providing every species with customized environments that met their specific needs. Scientific advancement accelerated as civilizations gained access to fundamental forces that had previously been beyond their reach. But the most remarkable change was in humanity itself. As they took responsibility for managing the welfare of thousands of species across millions of star systems, humans evolved beyond their original nature as a single-planet civilization. They became something like cosmic gardeners, tending to the growth and development of galactic civilization as a whole. Dr. Marcus Webb materialized in the command center through dimensional transit. His consciousness now expanded across multiple installations throughout the galaxy. Final phase is ready for implementation, he announced. We can complete the galactic transformation within the next 72 hours. The final phase involved the most delicate work of all, modifying the physics around Earth itself to ensure that humanity's homeworld remained recognizable to its inhabitants while benefiting from the same enhancements provided to other species. It required balancing the preservation of familiar natural laws with the integration of capabilities that would allow humans to participate fully in the transformed galactic community. Dr. Chen made the decision that would complete humanity's journey from a threatened species to the shepherds of galactic civilization. Initiate final transformation. Bring Earth into full integration with a modified physics network. The change was subtle but profound. Earth's gravity remained normal. Its atmosphere continued to support human life. Its natural processes operated according to familiar patterns. But underlying those surface phenomena, the planet now existed in a framework of reality where human thoughts could influence matter directly, where distance and time could be manipulated through conscious intent, and where the fundamental forces of the universe responded to human needs and desires. Children have been playing ordinary games suddenly, found they could create pocket dimensions for hide and seek. Scientists discovered that their instruments could detect and measure phenomena that had previously existed only in theory. Artists learned to sculpt with gravity and paint with light itself. Humanity had completed its transformation from a species that barely understood its own solar system to cosmic engineers responsible for the welfare of an entire galaxy. The Caltharian Empire, along with thousands of other civilizations, found themselves living in a universe that actively supported their growth and development in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. The galaxy had become a garden, tended by beings who had once been threatened with extinction by forces beyond their control. And at the center of it all, on a small blue world in the Orion Arm, human children played games with physics that their ancestors would have called magic, while their parents worked to ensure that every species in the galaxy had the opportunity to reach its full potential. The Empire had thought they could crush Earth. Instead, Earth had transformed the entire galaxy into something better than what existed before. It was perhaps the most human response possible to the threat of extinction, not just to survive, but to make survival possible for everyone else as well. In the end, the greatest victory wasn't defeating their enemies. It was turning them into neighbors in a universe where conflict had become as obsolete as the old physics that had once limited what was possible. The war was over. The garden was just beginning to bloom.